Right now it is 8:07, and drug users say they're left feeling somewhat confused by the drug laws across our region. Tonight's Inside Out programme will explore the policing of cannabis use across the North East. Now, some users claim that the enforcement is like a postcode lottery, with some forces turning a blind eye to small-time personal users. Durham Police have been vocal in not going after small-time users. Figures obtained through a Freedom of Information Act have found that over the last 4 years, charges for cannabis possession fell by 32% and cautions fell by 66%. Durham's Police and Crime Commissioner Ron Hogg has been the loudest in calling for medicinal use of raw cannabis to be legalised, and he says the police are exercising their discretion that they've always had.
How many drunks are arrested on a Friday and Saturday night? The police do not arrest every drunk. We could not arrest everyone who's actually smoking cannabis. Does that mean we're condoning cannabis use? Does it mean we're condoning drunkenness? Absolutely not. I've got critics, I understand that, and well, who wouldn't? That doesn't mean to say that I should be silent. I think I'm representing views of many, many people in our communities, and as I say, I've had no adverse reaction from members of our community.
Well, David Rains is an executive councillor for the National Drug Prevention Alliance, and Michael Fisher from the Teesside Cannabis Club. They both join us on the phone this morning. First of all, if I go to David Rains first and ask you, what do you make of what Ron's saying then, David?
It's fact that most police forces do not go after, in the words you use, go after small-scale cannabis users. But what Ron Hogg and his chief constable have done is announced that they're not going to go after people who grow cannabis at home. Now, a considerable amount of dealing takes place with cannabis grown at home. The modern cannabis is much stronger than cannabis of old, and the cannabis that's grown at home is strong. And it's worth reminding ourselves what the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs said in its last major report on cannabis. It says cannabis is a significant public health issue. Cannabis can unquestionably cause harm to individuals and society. So what I complain about is not that they're prioritising. I expect them to prioritise, and I think it's quite reasonable. Not everybody gets arrested for cannabis use. What I question is why they should announce that they're not going to go after people growing cannabis. And I think that has sent the wrong signals, and I think it's quite wrong for a chief constable or his police and crime commissioner to try and overturn the laws of Parliament. It's like a chief constable saying, well, we're not going to bother with speeding. You wouldn't say that. You may make speeding a low priority, but you wouldn't make public announcements about it.
It's kind of giving a green light in a way, I suppose, isn't it? What do you make of what people are saying now because of this, because of what's been said? They're very confused now as to what the rules are surrounding cannabis. I mean, a few people have said, is it still even illegal? So people seem very confused.
Yeah, I can understand that people want to complain about it, and there is inconsistency. The chief constable and his police and crime commissioner have acted wrongly. The matter of cannabis has been well debated in Parliament. Only 14 MPs turned up to debate it last time it was debated, and 4 of those were against legalisation and decriminalisation. So it isn't going anywhere in the UK. If this police and crime commissioner wants to get the law changed or thinks the law's wrong, he's got access to the Home Secretary. He can write to the Home Secretary. What he should not do is grandstand. He's grandstanding, and he shouldn't be doing that. Most of what we do about drugs is about containment of use, and cannabis use in the UK has been contained. It's only 6 to 7% of the population, and it does harm a lot of people, particularly young people. It damages them for life.
Just how harmful is it then? Or can it
Well, it can be very, very harmful. We've had a few psychotic attacks where people have been physically attacked and even killed. There was one recently, wasn't there? For young people, many of them, it affects their brain adversely. They fail to reach their human potential. They fail to reach their physical potential, and they can be damaged permanently for life. Education permanently damaged. It makes schooling very difficult. People who use pot on the way to school, at school, and on the way home from school are unteachable, and teachers have to bear the brunt of this. So the chief constable and his police and crime commissioner are very, very wrong to do what they've done.
All right, David, just stay on the line if you would, because we've got Michael Fisher, as Amy mentioned there, from the Teesside Cannabis Club. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Yeah. First of all, what do you make of what Ron Hogg is saying, and do you want to react to what David has just said?
First of all, I'd like to say I think Ronald Hogg, I think the force itself, Durham's force, finishing outstanding in the country, shows itself that a sensible approach to not just his drug policy but to overall policing as the way that other police forces should be going in the country.
Right, hang on. Do you see this as a green light, as Amy mentioned? Is this a green light for you?
Not at all. Cannabis users are well aware that it's illegal in the UK.
Right.
Obviously, they're well aware that if anybody was to report them to the police would act accordingly. That's never been confused at all, I don't believe.
Thing is, though, they're not, though, because all of these people we've spoken to for Inside Out are saying, look, we're really confused because,
it's a postcode lottery.
Yeah,
if we
come into
it is a postcode lottery in terms of there's 6 forces currently in the UK that have implemented Ron's approach. Might not have gone publicly, but they've still implemented Ron's approach. There might be a couple more forces that I'm not aware of. I think the figures speak for themselves. Like I said, it's not just about the prioritisation, it's about being realistic. And if you look at the fact that alcohol is 114 times more dangerous than cannabis is, no one's ever died from cannabis. The only way cannabis is ever going to kill someone is if a large amount falls on them. I think David needs to stop getting his facts from the Daily Mail.
Well, hang on a second. He's on the line. Talk to him direct. Go on then, David.
Yep.
You can speak as well.
Well, I heard that. In fact, there have been some deaths from cannabis. In California, coroners can now use cannabis as a cause of death. There's a German academic paper on cause. Listen, I let you speak. Please don't interrupt, and I'll let you speak. That's how we can be civil to each other. There's a German academic paper on deaths from cannabis. There's been some deaths from cannabis in the UK. There was a young lady in her early 30s killed, reported by cannabis. It causes cardiovascular complications. It is rare. I agree it is rare, but you can't say that it has never killed anybody.
All right, Michael, come back.
I can say that once again. The lady you're talking about in the UK, it was reported by the Daily Mail paper. Once again, there was no facts to back this up. It's just, once again, the Daily Mail putting out propaganda just to try and dissuade the masses. This is where the confusion comes in. At the end of the day, for 70-odd years, cannabis has been illegal because it's about pharmaceutical companies and the gain that they can make. Medicinal cannabis will never come in the UK. He's absolutely right, until pharmaceutical companies can find a way to profit from it. As for the regulation of cannabis, that's why we need it regulated, and to take away the street version of it, the street crime of it.
Michael, just to clarify, are you backing what Ron Hogg and Durham Police are doing here?
100%. I think it's a sensible approach.
David, you think it's dangerous, do you?
I think it's wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong for a minor public official to do what Mr. Hogg has done. He's quite entitled to have a view about cannabis, as is your other speaker. You know, that's perfectly reasonable. That's the way public debate takes place. But it's quite wrong of him to announce it. And, you know, a lot of people voted for him as commissioner. Some of them have got young children who they don't want to use cannabis. Some of them will not support. You know, he represents everybody, not just the people who vote for him because of his cannabis policy.
Got to say, David and Michael, we just had a text in from Matt in Great Ayton, and he says, morning everyone, the negative effects of cannabis on our health, sketchy at best, and are actually now outweighed by the positive cancer-fighting properties of the drug. That's the opinion of Matt in Great Ayton.
David, do you want to come back briefly at that one?
I'm not going to comment on it. I mean, the people who are pro-cannabis advocates will say anything. As your other speaker there says that cannabis never caused any deaths. Well, that is absolutely untrue. You know, it's just ridiculous. So they will say anything, and, you know, good luck to them. But let's focus on the Police and Crime Commissioner. What he did is wrong. He represents all his community, and some of his community don't want their children and grandchildren to use cannabis.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. David Rains, an executive councillor with the National Drug Prevention Alliance. You also heard from Michael Fisher from the Teesside Cannabis Club. If you want to have your say, that's what we're here for, of course. 01642 225511 is our telephone number. It's 850.
Cannabis users have complained of inconsistent enforcement of the law on drugs across the northeast. In County Durham, small-time personal users aren't targeted, but the BBC's Inside Out programme tonight reveals that users could be arrested for possession or released, depending on the area, the police force and the officer dealing with them.
32. We've been talking this morning about this so-called postcode lottery. That's how cannabis users are describing the way the law on drugs is enforced across the northeast. In Durham, I think the Police and Crime Commissioner has called for legalised medicinal use, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
There's one in here, I just want to read this one just before the headline challenge, who says, morning everybody, I want to remain anonymous, but I went to Amsterdam a year ago, and while I was there I tried cannabis for the first time. I will stress that it was completely legal to do so, but I've got to say it wasn't for me. I've never felt so ill. If somebody had asked me my name, I wouldn't have been able to tell them. I was like a zombie. If people want to indulge in cannabis, that is up to them, but after my experience, I'll never understand why people would want to smoke cannabis.
So you can have your say on that. Anything else we're covering on the show as well, of course. 01642 225511.
A postcode lottery is how some drug users are describing enforcement by police across the northeast. In Durham, the Police Crime and Victims Commissioner Ron Hogg is calling for medicinal cannabis to be legalised, but it's left many people not knowing where they stand. Some of our police forces have stopped targeting small-time personal users. David Rains is from the National Drug Prevention Alliance. He says what Ron Hogg is doing is changing the culture.
He represents all of those people in Durham. Not all of those people will want cannabis normalised and legalised. Drug use is cultural. So when a chief constable speaks about legalising a drug or normalising a drug, or the Police and Crime Commissioner speaks about it, they affect the culture. And I think they act improperly when they do that.